Welcome to this session dedicated to running clinical projects in IHL. I'm Giulio Bartolini, full professor of international law at Roma Tre University and director of the Roma Tre IHL Legal Clinic. In this lecture, I will be discussing the central aspects of the activities of an IHL Legal Clinic, namely how to run clinical projects. You will learn first the typologies of projects which can be run by an IHL Legal Clinic. Second, how to select and handle clinical projects. And finally, how to interact with partners during and after the management of a clinical project. Through the previous lectures, you have understood that IHL Legal Clinics present certain special features. Notably, their activities contribute to the fulfillment of states' obligation to disseminate IHL among the civilian population, a rule reaffirmed in several conventions, including the 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949. Furthermore, they can contribute to projects run by other stakeholders in IHL, such as transnational and national NGOs, including national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, international organizations involved in the application and promotion of IHL, or distinctive actors of the international legal order, as the International Committee of the Red Cross. These partnerships naturally influence the types of projects which they might be engaged with. Consequently, IHL Legal Clinics are generally involved in projects aimed at the promotion, dissemination, and enforcement of IHL. This could be desk studies projects, which involve the drafting of reports for partner organizations, as for studies on the compatibility of domestic legal order with some IHL obligation. There could also be non-technical materials for advocacy campaigns, as for flyers or educational material for the youth, also exploiting possibilities offered by the use of digital technologies, as for the development of mobile applications devoted to IHL. Or it could be the case for strategic litigation projects, usually providing legal support to NGOs representing victims of violation of IHL in international or domestic fora. To a lesser degree, IHL Legal Clinics can also provide direct legal assistance and services to individuals acting as legal aid clinics. An example of an IHL clinical project with a clear dissemination purpose is the project IHL in Action, Respect for the Law on the Battlefield, run by the ICRC since 2016 in cooperation with several legal clinics from around the world, including our own here at Roma Tre University. IHL in Action is an online platform which collects real case studies documenting examples of compliance with IHL in modern conflicts. Its declared aim is to promote compliance with IHL by changing the narrative that focuses on its violation only. Each case study is also complemented by a set of questions concerning the applicable IHL rules and the identification of non-legal elements contributing to compliance with IHL. Over the past few years, the case studies have been used for different dissemination activities involving members of the armed forces, students, professionals, and IHL trainers from national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies. To give you a broader overview of the types of projects IHL Legal Clinics have been involved with, we asked some of our students from the clinics in Roma Tre, Leyden, and Bochum to tell us about projects they have been working on. Let's hear what they said.
Could you please briefly describe a project that you've been involved into during the IHL clinic and your experience with it?
Yeah, sure. So during the IHL clinic, my partner or the partner of my team was the German Red Cross, and we had a very special project actually because our project was to design educational material for the German schools. So we had the task to do a double lesson for 13 to 15 years old and for 16 to 18 years old. So we designed 2 lessons for these age groups, and the interesting part was that we didn't really have like a research question. So our input was just basic IHL, which is of course still interesting, but we didn't have like a problem that we have to solve like some of the other groups had. And our challenge was to design the educational material and make it interesting for the students, so they get the point of IHL, but not put too much IHL into it, so that they don't get the point of it. So it's too much. You can't put everything into a double lesson. So that was kind of our challenge, to create something where the students come out of the classroom and get the basic points of IHL and can take something away from this double lesson.
So I worked at the IHL Legal Clinic at Roma University, and I had the pleasure to work on 2 different projects. The first one was in collaboration with the Italian Red Cross, and it was the first project that we worked on was more analyzing a conflict in light of IHL provisions, which was a great occasion to actually apply the provision that we just studied with our professor and apply them to a real case scenario. As for the second project that I worked on with my 2 fellow colleagues, it was about the right to education in armed conflict, and this project was in collaboration with NATO LOFAS, which is a subsidiary body of NATO's legal office. So, of course, the challenge for this project was to create something that was not merely let's say, an academic analysis of the right to education and conflict in light of international humanitarian law, but rather we wanted to create something that could be of interest and concrete utility for NATO legal advisor.
And I was working on the project which was called Urban Warfare, Review of State Policies and Practices. And so this was the project in cooperation with the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights. And we were focusing on the revision of state practices and their practical application in the conflicts of Ukraine and Iraq. And so we were reviewing how states incorporate the principles regarding civilian protection into their national legislation and military manuals, and then how do these principles are respected or not in practice. And so we were looking into the justifications that states provide for the attacks on the civilians and civilian objects, and this is what our project was basically focusing on.
The organization and management of clinical projects requires the director to take a number of factors into account. The first factor concerns the areas of the law covered by the project. IHL legal clinics often work on multidisciplinary projects, either involving a mix of IHL and other branches of domestic law or other areas of public international law. In this case, the legal clinic should only accept projects relevant to an area of the law where it has sufficient expertise and resources, for instance, international criminal law or international human rights law. The second aspect concerns the number of projects to be handled. For the duration of each course, the legal clinic should accept to work on a number of projects or cases proportional to the amount of available time and resources. Especially if you are running a IHL legal clinic for the first time, and if you don't benefit from the collaboration of teaching assistants, you might want to ensure not to overload your clinic with many different projects. A couple of projects might be sufficient to this end. Finally, directors should take into account the duration of the project. When choosing a project, it is important to ensure that the time necessary to complete the project matches the duration of the clinical course. Students should generally not be asked to continue working on a project for a long time after completing their course. If a project requires a longer time to be completed, you can consider splitting the management of the project over 2 semesters or reduce the number of planned projects in order to involve a sufficient number of students in arranging it. Before accepting a project, the director shall communicate transparently with the prospective partner in order to, first, illustrate the type of services and skills provided by the clinic, the extent of students' role within clinical projects, and the basic rules regulating the legal clinic's activities. Second, define objectives, content, and time frame for the completion of each project. And third, provide the partner information on the students and supervisor will be involved in the project development. The involvement of students in a preliminary meeting with partners is a highly recommended practice, as to permit clinic students to get information on the planning activity by the partner organization and get insight on its activities and rationale for involving in a cooperation with a IHL legal clinic. The good management of a IHL clinical project requires not only clear and transparent communication before the beginning of the clinic's activities, it also requires that such communication remains available during the management of the project, as well as after its completion. No matter how clear the partner's indications are concerning the expected outcome of a project, doubts will always arise on how to handle specific aspects of the clinical work. In such cases, it is essential that the clinic seeks interim meeting and exchange of information with the cooperating partner. More generally, the legal clinic should regularly communicate with external partners to provide updates on the project progresses and shall inform the partner of any changes to the project which might be rendered necessary during the course of clinical activities. The cooperating partner should facilitate the management of the project by identifying a focal point responsible for addressing potential challenges and managing such communication. Some clinics also permit cooperating partners to contribute to the interim or final revisions of students' outputs. Clear communication is also key at the moment of the submission of project outputs. In this respect, directors should make sure that the partner is available for an in-person or online meeting with students where they can present the project result. Besides being helpful for the partner to understand and navigate the outcome of the clinical work, such meetings foster the professional attitude and presentation skills of students, and therefore constitute an essential part of the legal clinic's educational activities. These meetings are also a very good networking opportunity for partners and students alike, being also a helpful reward for their activities. In this video lecture, you have learned how to select and manage clinical projects in IHL. In particular, you have learned, first, that IHL Legal Clinic might engage with different typologies of projects, including desk studies, non-technical material for advocacy campaign, strategic litigation, and direct legal assistance to individuals. Second, that when selecting clinical projects, directors should take a number of factors into account, including the area of law covered by the project, the number and duration of projects, and make choices based on the legal clinic's expertise and available time and resources. Third, that the good management of an IHL clinical project requires continuous communication with the cooperating partner, both prior to the activation of the project and during and after the project completion. The next module, we will be able to find out more on how to supervise an IHL legal clinic.